So I'm going to be talking today about equipping and encouraging your team and your volunteers and how to create a culture where people come prepared and ready to give of their talents and abilities. So my name is Julia, by the way. Nice to meet everybody. I work for a company called Sunday Sounds, and we develop software and sounds for worship keys players and churches all over the world. Our goal is to provide worship leaders and musicians with practical, easy-to-use resources and products that help them achieve musical excellence in worship. We love getting to help keys players realize their potential and help them to bring everything that they have to the table and find worth in their musical offering. And we do also have a booth out in the lobby, so come say hi, come talk to us if you want to learn more about what we do. A little bit about me. I know you already saw a picture of my family, but I've been a worship leader, or a worship musician, for over 11 years. I've played with lots of churches, big and small. I play keys primarily, and I actually met my husband on one of those teams 6 years ago, and now we have 2 kids that love to come and run around during rehearsal, and we love it. Brooklyn is 2, and Boston is 2 months, so yeah, we love getting to include them in everything we do. One of the things that I love about worship is the connection between the spiritual aspect and the musical aspect, and how those just fit so well together. I was a music major in college, and so I have always been a nerd about music theory and all of those things. And I think it's so cool the way that notes and keys and chords come together to build something beautiful out of those building blocks. And the way that God was so thoughtful when he designed sound, and he inspired people over time to categorize that into frequencies, which moved into notes, into chords and keys and tonal centers, and eventually came to what we know today as music. Through worship, we are able to take this creation that has evolved over time and been influenced by culture and give it back to the Creator. And I think that's beautiful. The way that God was so thoughtful that he designed music to create an atmosphere that allows our souls to lean in and connect with him. So by worshiping through music, we're not only giving of our talents and our abilities, right? But we're leading other people to come and connect and lean in and give of their abilities in the same way, right? Worship is more than music, and you all know that, right? That's why you're here. It's sacred. And whenever we are able to work as a team and each come with our own unique God-given talents, spiritual gifts, abilities we've developed over time, and create a worshipful atmosphere for the people in our congregation, it's even more powerful. I want to talk to you guys today about encouraging and equipping your team to be successful. We're going to talk about some practical and spiritual ways that you can prepare your volunteers to worship freely, feel prepared, and be encouraged in their God-given abilities. I think a lot of times we see the spiritual nature of worship wear off when volunteers feel like they're not being set up for success, whether that's from their own lack of practice and excitement about what they're doing, or whether that's lack of organization from the leader or from other people on the team. If we're striving to create a worshipful atmosphere for the congregation that we're leading, we need to also do the same for our volunteers and for our team. And we do that by providing them with practical tools to be musically and technically successful, and also by investing in their spiritual health. First off, you need to meet your volunteers where they are at. So you may have a team of people with a really wide range of abilities, and that is awesome, right? To have people that are experienced and to have people that are brand new coming into the genre of worship. God brings all kinds of people through the doors, and it can be really cool to see what kind of backgrounds they have, right? Musically and then just in general. Some of the best worship musicians I've personally played with have been in rock bands and metal bands, or had orchestral experience, or sang in wedding bands, right? It can be really cool to see, how God calls each of us from our background and uses us for his church. But it can also be really difficult having a big gap in experience between your volunteers, right? I know even just from talking to a few of you guys this morning that some of you guys have a lot of people that are brand new and then just a couple people experienced, or vice versa. And it's just hard to mix those abilities and get everybody on the same page and feel good about what they're bringing to the table. But the thing is, they all have something to offer. And their offering has value, right? No matter how experienced your volunteers are, if they are bringing the most basic of basic abilities, like they just picked up the guitar, but they come with an open heart and they are ready to serve and to worship God, let them do that. That offering has value. They have a unique story that gives them something to offer that no other person can. And I think that's kind of beautiful in the way that God calls us, just in general, right? We all have our own story, our own experience, where we came from, what we've done, and God says, I'm going to use you, come to me. And so I think that the worship team and tech team is a reflection of that in that way. A lot of our customers at Sunday Sounds are classically trained musicians who have experience playing piano as soloists or accompanists, and they're now looking to apply that knowledge to their role on keys in a worship environment. And a lot of times, individuals don't know where to start when playing sounds that aren't piano, right? Like pads and leads and arps and all these things, but they're interested to learn more about the sounds that they hear on these worship albums and in these recordings. And this is super, super common. Odds are that nearly every person on your team has learned their instrument or sang in a different environment than worship, right? They learned playing in band when they were younger, or they took lessons on their instrument previously, and now they have to bring that knowledge and apply it to worship. Transferring that knowledge can take some time, just having to relearn the way that you understand music. I definitely had to relearn how I understood music. I remember when I started playing keys, I was in high school and I had taken lessons previously, but I had never heard about what chords were, right? Does anybody relate? So I was handed a chord chart, and I remember this. It was Mighty to Save, and it was in the key of G, super simple, and I had to write out. I went home, I Googled what are chords, and I wrote out each note that I was gonna play in both hands above every chord in the entire song, right? Which is not intuitive, but it did what I had to do to figure it out and learn. And they were not like good inversions. It was like root position, very crunchy, didn't sound good. But I think it's cool to remember that there was a point in time where everyone in this room had no idea what you were doing, right? Like everyone started somewhere. And then you had to take that knowledge and apply it to worship. Now, if you're really cool, then you learned your instrument for worship and you get bonus points. So good for you. I think back to my 14-year-old self who didn't know what chords were, and all of the feelings that I felt when I was tasked with having to learn a new way to understand music. And it was a lot, right? It was kind of intimidating. And then I imagine those feelings in an adult who is experienced on their instrument and has played their instrument for a long time and has a bunch of technical ability and head knowledge on how to play, for example, if they're a piano player, to play Bach or Beethoven or Mozart. And then imagine being this person and being handed a chord chart to Graves into Gardens, right? Fairly simple song to play, great song, love that song. But not even knowing what to do, right? That can be discouraging to your volunteers, to be expected to know what to do, but not have any clue. So rather than assume your musician's ability, get to know them. Ask them questions about their life, about their background, about how they learned their instrument, previous places they've played or sang, and ask them what they need to feel successful. And this doesn't only apply to beginners, by the way. Ask your experienced musicians how they'd like to grow and what their musical goals are, and talk openly about what you'd like to hear from them as a musician in a worship environment. And this will give you both a clear picture how to bridge that gap from where they are and where they can feel like they are bringing something excellent to the table.
Before we continue on with the video, I want to tell you about our sponsor, the Churchfront Live Conference. It's a 2-day conference with keynotes and breakout sessions on topics like worship tech, worship theology, musicianship, and leadership. It is a great way to network with other like-minded ministry leaders in the Churchfront community. The sooner you purchase your Churchfront Live tickets, the greater the discount you will get with the early bird discount code. So head on over to churchfrontlive.com, use that early bird discount code at checkout, and I look forward to seeing you at the conference. Now let's get back to the video.
This next one seems kind of self-explanatory. Provide your people with practical, tangible resources. Get your set list out in advance, everybody. I know you've heard it a lot, but it's important, right? Don't wait until the last minute to provide your people with what they need to practice, because your volunteers are the lifeblood of your ministries, right? Like, you couldn't do what you do without them. And they have families, they have obligations, they have work, and a bunch of other things that could prevent them from being able to practice last minute. So, like, especially if you have a midweek rehearsal, getting that set list out just a couple days in advance can make it really hard for people who need lots of time to prepare. And I know that there are sometimes other voices that want to say in what the set list is every week. Lead pastors, anybody, right? Like, that always have, their 2 cents, which is great, by the way, whenever your lead pastors want to have a say in what's going on with the worship team. That's awesome, but it can slow things down with those decisions. And occasionally things do need to be changed last minute, right? Like the key of a song, or finding a song that fits better with the message. But when those situations arise, you have the opportunity to become the advocate for your team, right? There we go. Wait, did that change? I think it did. There we go. Sorry. When you know the people on your team, you know what they will realistically be able to accomplish. And by the way, I just want to say, I do not think it's a bad thing to have an environment where you do change things last minute and you are able to pivot on the fly. I think that is fantastic and really what we should all be striving towards, right? To be able to move with the Spirit and do things that are last minute, but do them well. But it takes time to get there, right? As individuals, but then also as a team, because musically, like, you communicate in different ways, and so it takes practice to be able to do that effectively. And sometimes it's good to push your volunteers a little bit, but don't get in the habit of making last-minute changes every week or allowing other people to do so, right? Set boundaries on behalf of your team, and they will thank you in the long run. Another practical resource you can provide is training for your musicians and your tech team. Because I guarantee you, your tech team will be more excited about what they do if they understand what they do. How many times have you heard that it's someone's job to just change the slides or just push this button at this time in the service? Just like very simplified versions of these people's roles. I don't think that I would be very excited about volunteering if I was being told that my job was so simple that anyone could do it, right? That you're replaceable, you just push a button there. No, that's not cool. And it's so much more than that. And you guys know that, right? So, because when you're efficiently running something like ProPresenter, in order to effectively run it, you need to know how it works. You need to know what to do when troubles arise in order to troubleshoot last minute and share knowledge with others. And understanding these things can give your volunteers a sense of ownership over their role, and again, find value in their offering and their sacrifice of getting up early and coming and serving. And that's important. That's really the most important, is that they know that what they're doing makes a difference. So train your people. Maybe host a volunteer training night a couple times a year. That's not a bad idea. Or if you don't have a lot of time on your hands, point them towards online resources, right? The Churchfront team has so many resources. You guys know, you're here. Just videos and things to help you understand your role and what you're doing. And the same goes for musicians. If your people need training on a specific instrument, send them to worship artistry or song select or worship tutorials or something. There are so many resources out there to point your people towards. And sometimes they might need a little bit of help finding those tools up front, but if you encourage them to dig deeper themselves, then that time commitment from you will decrease as they figure out where to look and how to learn themselves. So the third point that I want to make pertains to you, all of you, as the leaders of your teams. Just like any other role in ministry, it is so easy to find yourself exhausted, overwhelmed, and burnt out, right? I see some head nods. I guarantee everyone in this room has felt it. I've felt it, even just as a volunteer. Combating exhaustion can be really difficult when you have a lot on your plate and when you wear so many hats in your role and you have so many things to do. When you're at the point of burnout, in ministry in particular, it's almost like there is a sense of shame associated with it. People don't like to talk about it. And I don't think we talk enough about mental health in the church, And I'm not going to get super detailed into everything today, but I do want to say that your mental and your spiritual health matters, right? It matters to God, it matters to the people that you serve, and it should matter to you too. I wanted to title this point, Take Time to Fill Your Cup. I could have written, Make time to be alone with God, or spend more time reading your word, or something like that, which obviously those are good things, and you should do those things. But I really want to impress upon you that filling your cup doesn't necessarily look like just reading the Bible. It can look like going for a walk, or spending time with your spouse, or taking a nap. Amen? Right? Yes. Yes. Or gardening, or mowing the lawn, if that's your thing. It's not my thing, but checking something off your long-term to-do list, and of course, spending time in prayer, reading your Bible, and making time for personal worship with God. Just all kinds of things that energize you and allow you to be at your best so that you can pour into people when you need to. If you're burnt out, you aren't going to be able to lead your team from a healthy place. You won't be able to actively invest in your volunteers, and they will be able to sense your burnout because that feeling is contagious, unfortunately. You are ultimately responsible for the environment of your team. So take time to fill your cup so that you can be present and you can serve your people well. All in all, I really just want to encourage you guys because God called you here for a reason. He's chosen you to do exactly what you're doing in the way that you're doing it, and he's equipped you with everything that you need in order to do so. So be bold in that. Step into the calling that he's placed upon you and know that you are fully capable of filling that role. Know that the little things that you do for your team have a spiritual impact. I want to share a quick story with you guys of a conversation that I had with a friend of mine when I first came on the team with Sunday Sounds. I was really excited to be doing sound design and for the church, the Big C church. I was super excited. I was telling her, I get to make these sounds, these patches, and then people all over the world play them in their worship services, and it's just really exciting, to get to do that for the church. And she asked me, do you pray over your patches or your sounds? And I asked her what she meant. And she said, well, congregations all over the world are going to be hearing these sounds, right? I said, yeah. And so she said, so when you're making those decisions to EQ your pad a certain way or to use this piano and that ARP and layer them together, those decisions you make matter and they have a spiritual impact because those sounds are going out to those churches and those congregations all over the world, being played in physical space and creating the physical medium through which the Holy Spirit speaks to the people in those congregations. It matters, right? The little decisions, the little changes matter. And so she said, do you pray over your patches? And I said, well, now I will, right? After all that, yes, I will. And I think that the way that she explained that was just so beautiful because those little decisions do matter. Like obviously putting a notch in the EQ at 1K on a pad will make it sound better in the room, right? Like that matters in that sense, but it has a spiritual impact too, right? Because it's pulling out that distraction in that sense. So I really want to encourage you to think about the little things you do for your team that are in the weeds that maybe seem like, tedious or annoying, like running the cables for your soundboard or setting up the mics for the drums, making sure they're, right in the right place, or asking your volunteers again to respond on Planning Center if they're going to show up, right? Yes. All of the things that seem like they don't have an impact. They do. They matter. You are just as much pastors in your roles as everything else that falls into your lap. And in fact, pastoring your team is arguably the most important part of your role because you are creating people who go out and lead worship with their lives, right? On your team and in the congregation. But that job should not be taken lightly, right? I know when there's a lot of little things to worry about, all the little technical details, great to learn, great to do. But that role should be the primary. That should be your focus. I want to encourage you again to lean into your calling. God chose you. He chose you to do what you're doing. Lean into that. Step into it with confidence. Be intentional with your volunteers and provide them with practical help when they need it. And take care of your personal relationship with God. It's so important. I really want to end with praying over you guys, if that's okay. Okay. Lord, I want to thank you for the hearts of each person in this room. God, you called them to their position for a reason. You have equipped them with everything they need. God, you brought them here to learn and to grow and to engage and be able to go back to their ministries more prepared to serve them well. God, thank you for being so sovereign and just for loving us where we are and for coming alongside us as we learn how to better serve you and better worship you. I pray that as everyone in this room goes back to their own churches and their own ministries, God, that you just keep that fire lit. God, remind them of moments here that they have speaking to other people and in times of worship with you. God, remind them that you are in the details and that everything they do matters. Every little thing, it matters. It has an impact. God, thank you. We love you, and that's why we do what we do. And we just want to serve you more. We know that you are holy, holy, holy. In your name I pray. Amen.